When I first began thinking about V, I had finished The $6 Million Man, The Bionic Woman. I had done 4 years, almost 5 years of The Incredible Hulk at Universal, and had just joined Warner Brothers. And I read a novel by an American author, Sinclair Lewis, very famous author, wonderful writer. And he had written a book called It Can't Happen Here, about a fascist uprising in the United States, similar to what had happened in Germany and Italy during World War II. At the beginning, I didn't think about doing V as a science fiction piece. I had actually researched carefully and written a script that was about a grassroots takeover of the American government by fascists. And there was no aliens or reptilians or anything like that involved. And I was planning to do it as a motion picture, as a feature. And I was having dinner with my friend Brandon Tartikoff one night, who was the president of NBC, dear guy. And he said, what are you doing, Kenny? And I said, well, I've got this thing. I started to tell him about it, and he got very excited, and he said, oh, I want to read it. And I said, Brandon, this is not television. This is a feature. This is big stuff, you know. And he said, let me read it. And so he read it, and he got very excited, and Brandon could be very compelling and very seductive. And he said, look, let's do this as a big mini-series. And it could be a series that would go on as a 1-hour episodic show after that. And, you know, I thought about it, and I said, well, okay, that would be really interesting, because there's so many wonderful stories to tell of intrigue and suspense and tension and paranoia about what it's like to be under occupation. And he said, yeah, but you know, Kenny, I'm not sure Americans will really understand fascism. And I said, well, it's not a complicated concept, Brandon. You shave your head, you put on a brown shirt, and you beat somebody up, you know? And he said, no, but couldn't it be an outside force that would come in, like the Chinese or then the Soviets, you know? And I said, I just don't believe they could sustain a long-lasting occupation of the United States. And I don't know, somehow the subject of aliens came up, and I went, ah! So I really was not excited about the idea of doing something that was, you know, that involved aliens. But I went home and I was thinking about it, and I got to thinking, well, wait a minute, this is kind of interesting. I could really work on a metaphorical level. I could tell a piece that would have all of a sudden this wonderful eye candy and this big visuals of spacecraft and everything like that that would hook in an audience, particularly a younger audience. And then once I got them, then I could tell the story that I really wanted to tell, which was a story of human conflict, of human relationships, of human emotions.
Mon Dieu, qu'est-ce que c'est?
Quel engin!
C'est super!
C'est fantastique!
So I went back to Brandon and I said, okay, I think I can do it the way that you're talking about. And I said, how does this sound to you? And I started telling him the story. And I sat in his office and literally told him the story for 2 hours. He never read the story. I just told it to him. And he said, that's great, go write the script. And I said, don't you have any notes? In Hollywood, you always get notes, you know. And he said, no, what are you talking about? It's great, go write the script. Okay. So I came back 19 days later with a 230-page screenplay. Brandon read it over a weekend, literally, which again never happens in Hollywood. And then he said, Kenny, let's do this. You know, and he said to Warner Brothers, go make it. I want it right away. And Warner's had not sold anything that year in television, so they were really in trouble. NBC was at a low ebb in their ratings. They were the number 3 out of 3 networks, and things were not going well, and they needed something big that they could promote and really pump up. And everybody wanted it fast. And now, for a miniseries that's 4 hours long, particularly one that was going to be, at that point, the most expensive miniseries ever made in the history of television, one would expect to get 3 months or so of preparation time, okay? From the day Brandon said go until the day I said action was 2.5 weeks. I did have the advantage of having my whole crew from The Incredible Hulk, so I had my family, as it was, around me. And we all spoke the same shorthand, and we all knew how to work together, which was great. So I didn't have to spend a lot of time hiring crew. And what we did was we did all the prep we could possibly do in 2.5 weeks, and we started shooting. And we'd shoot Monday to Friday, and on Saturday and Sunday, we would all get together and prep for the following week. It was nightmarish because we were doing everything on the fly. All the decisions had to be made instantly. I did as much casting as I could do in the 2.5 weeks, and then we started shooting, and then after shooting every day, I would come back to the studio and we'd have more casting sessions for the people that were not yet cast. We didn't even have a budget until we were 3 weeks into the filming. And then 4 weeks into the filming, one of my leading ladies was murdered. Dominique Dunn, who had been the teenage girl in Poltergeist, the original movie of Poltergeist, played the role of Robin, my teenage girl in V. And she had her boyfriend came over to her house one evening, 3 weeks into the filming, and they had a little set-to, and he ended up strangling her with her own scarf. And she went into a coma, and I was one of the first ones at the hospital when they brought her in. And I was with the family 5 days later when they took her off life support, and it was devastating. I mean, I'd never had anything like that happen in my life. And I wouldn't wish it on anyone because she was not only a wonderful actress and a dear friend, but she was this great spirit. She would come to the dailies with me in the evening, even when the film was not her scenes, when it was just her other people, because she wanted to see what we were doing, and she was wonderful, and we missed her sorely. And Blair Tefkin I hired to step into the role, which was a terrible place for poor Blair to have to be. And we had to go back and reshoot 5 or 6 days of filming that we had done with Dominique, including some very difficult, complicated, effects-laden material. And the whole shoot was under that sort of tension and speed and necessity to get it done. Faye Grant, who was my leading lady playing the role of Juliet, they're named for my 2 children, Juliet and Michael, incidentally. And Faye I had worked with a year earlier in a TV movie that we had done together called Senior Trip. It was about a sort of a senior high school class trip to New York City, kind of like American Graffiti, but on the road in New York. And she had just stunned me with her performance, with her beauty, with her naturalism, and her ability to really get inside and inhabit a role. And when I began writing V, I thought, gee, Faye would really be a wonderful character for this. And I told NBC about it, and they said, yes, we like her so much. We've been looking for something to do with her. And she was delighted to come on board.
Voilà ce qu'on va faire. Il faut organiser la résistance pour qu'elle soit efficace. C'est vrai.
I was intrigued about the idea of a young woman who never thought of being some sort of a heroic resistance fighter, suddenly being thrust up into that position because she was the natural leader. And even though she didn't recognize it, everyone around her recognized it. And Faye Grant